Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading today from Bhagavat Gita as it is chapter 5, text number 18 and 19. So 18 first. Yada viniyatam chittam Atmani eva vashtite Nisparaha sarva kamebhyo Yukta hi uchyate tada. Is the right verse? Atma eva bhavatishtate Nisparya sarva kamebhyo Yukta hi uchyate tada. Yada viniyatam chitam Atmani eva vatishtate Nispriha sarva kamebhyo Yukta iti uchyate tada. Okay. Found it? Alright, synonyms. Yada, when, viniyatam, particularly disciplined, chittam, the mind and its activities, atmani, in the transcendence, eva, certainly, avatishtate, become situated, nispriha, devoid of desire, sarva, for all kinds of, kamebhyah, material sense gratification, yukta, well situated in yoga, iti, thus, uchyate, is said to be, tada, at that time. Translation, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When the yogi, by the practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. So let's try to repeat the translation. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. Purport, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The activities of the yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires, of which sex is the chief. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. This perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, verses 18 to 20. So there's a big Sanskrit chunk here. I'm going to try to go through it. His translation is okay? Yeah, because it's quite a lot of Sanskrit and it takes a little time. But it's very important. Don't underestimate it. It's very important. Okay? So King Amrish, first of all, engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then, one after another, he engaged his words in describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. So first the mind, then the words. His hands in mopping the temple, then the hands of the Lord. His ears in hearing of the activities of the Lord. His eyes in seeing the transcendental forms of the Lord. His body in touching the bodies of the devotees. His sense of smell in smelling the scents of the lotus flowers offered to the Lord. His tongue in tasting the tulsi leaf offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. His legs in going to places of pilgrimage and the temple of the Lord. His head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in executing the mission of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee. Now this is the important part. This transcendental stage may be expressionable subjectively by the followers of the impersonalist path, but it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness, as is apparent in the above description of the engagements of Maharaj Amrisha. Second important point. Unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord, by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical in the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, these prescribed activities are called archana, or engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. These senses and the mind require engagement. Simple abnegation is not practical. Therefore, for people in general, especially those who are not in the renounced order of life, transcendental engagement of the senses and the mind, as described above, is the perfect process for transcendental achievement, which is called yukta in the Bhagavat Gita. And just read over text 19 quickly. Yata dipo nivata sto nengate sopama smite yo smite ta a. Oh, I have an E. S-M-I-T-E? A. Oh. Okay, sorry. You're coughing over, yeah. Yogino tata chittasya yunjito yogam atmanaha. Translation. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. Purport. A truly Krishna conscious person, always absorbed in transcendence, in constant undisturbed meditation on his worshipable Lord, is as steady as a lamp in a windless place. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Chakshurun Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadata Tadatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanamusha Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahajananda Sri Vishakhanamistha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, we continuing with this amazing activities of a yogi, somebody who's practicing a kind of activities which is going to help him to transcend this material world to reach the spiritual reality of life. He's somebody who's understood that this material world cannot give me a permanent experience, and things in this material world are temporary, and he's striving for something so great, so beyond what is ordinarily experienced in the material world. Therefore, he's completely out of antisocial, completely out of the reality of the material world. And he's completely focused on what he wants. Now, for somebody to be like this, he must be really convinced that this path exists very, very powerfully. And he's striving with all effect. And we'll see just now that it's not an easy thing. It's somebody who's completely dedicated to achieving this without any failure. He's completely focused to reach this higher level, this highest level of samadhi. And what is interesting here, because our Bhagavad Gita is translated by a bhakti yogi, and our line is the devotional line, we're seeing a very interesting parallel between two paths here, the yogi path and the bhakta path. And we're seeing what is more practical. So in essence, that's what we're discussing here. So quickly then, let's just see what we've been experiencing so far. This is just a summary of the chapter, and we are in verse 18. So we're in that section of realization of the Paramatma. So it's not very focused. Can you adjust the wheel there? There's a wheel right in front of the light there, Prabhu. Yeah, there's a wheel not in front of the light, it's above you there, from the top. Yeah, just turn it a little bit. Is that better? That's a little better. Okay, thank you. So this is what we've been discussing in this chapter. So we there where the yogis, he's just understood about Brahman realization. Now he's experiencing this Paramatma part. And especially after the verses that come after this, from 20 to 23, is a very deep insight on Samadhi. This, what is going to achieve the goal. And then of course Bhagavan after that. So this is the Samadhi aspect of what he wants to achieve. So it's a very, we're not going to get into this, it's a little technical for this class, but this is basically what he wants to achieve. This higher level of being focused, we're seeing symptoms of that, and completely being able to control the mind, the sound of the mind, the inner voice, the sound of the mind. So, yeah, this is the right, that's where we want to be. So So Prabhupada starts a very nice, this is a wonderful translation and purport that follows that gives us a very clear idea of what it takes to achieve something like this yogic practice that we're hearing about. And then, of course, the devotional tinge comes into it, where Prabhupada shows how practical is this, because it is very, very difficult. We actually seeing clearly what it would have taken in previous yugas to have reached such a stage like this. So Prabhupada starts the translation. He says here, when the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities, firstly, his mental activities has to be completely disciplined. That means there's no extracurricular activities. It's completely, I want that goal and I'm going to get it. And everything else just falls aside. And becomes situated in transcendence. What is transcendence? It's that higher reality, the spiritual reality. He's just focused and thinking about that, and thinking about how the material thing, nothing, I shouldn't think about matter, I should just think about spirit, just focus on that, not doing anything else. Devoid of all material desires. He has nothing material to worry about. His mind is just completely focused. Completely focused. So it's not somebody who's going to be part of the material world, right? He's not somebody who's going to have a job and have a family. He's completely focused. So let's see further. We're going to show you just now some aspects of that. And he is said to be well established in yoga. Such a person is said to be well established in yoga. So I just wanted to show you a sample of such a person. Just quickly. Let's see if we can.
Namaste.
But this Hari, senses,
yes.
senses,
Without food and water, it's
senses, one that is being seen as a modern miracle. Something only possible through the spiritual power.
So this is the person. This is, I don't know if you heard of him. It's a recent. He's not actually an incarnation because he's not propagating himself as any god man. He's actually a yogi. He's only 16 years old. I don't know if you can hear that. The volume is a bit low.
It's a phenomenon that people jog.
It's happening. It's in Nepal, and this boy, he hasn't eaten or drunk anything for 10 months. No water, no food for 10 months. And he's allowing scientists to evaluate and observe him. And it's really like, it's become a big craze there in that area.
Great pride and inspiration from here. Rambo Jan, a 15-year-old boy, has been...
Rambo Jan, his name is Rambo Jan. He's 15 years old.
Been meditating in dense jungle without food or water for 10 months.
So you think any one of us could do that? Just as a principle, as a yogi? 10 months, no food or water, is sitting in the middle of a jungle. This is the point what we're getting to here in today's verse. It's completely focused on reaching that goal. Completely cut off from the material world.
Many suggest he is a physiological and cognitive freak with such immense power of mind over matter that it could change the way we look at modern science and medicine forever.
If you slowly down without food and water, it's difficult to explain on a purely scientific basis, so you'd have to bring in spirituality.
As millions of pilgrims flock to the site, we'll explore the truth.
So this is what we're talking about here in today's verse. Something like really, somebody who's really focused. This is just an example, just to give you an idea of where this verse is heading. Okay. So this chapter is giving us an insight into the practice of a yogi striving for samadhi. Like you see this person, he's really cut off from everything. So he's really wanting to reach his goal of samadhi. Now what Prabhupada is doing is showing that as bhakti yogis, we also reach this. And he's giving a comparison of the both and seeing what is more practical. So let's see how Prabhupada develops this argument. So the goal is to move from external or the outer world to the level of reality, to the inner, higher level of reality, like you see that yogi doing there. So Prabhupada says in Statsa Purport, he says there, the activities of the yogi are distinguished from those of an ordinary person. You can see this person is definitely not no ordinary person can go 10 months with no food and no water. And what to speak of just sitting like that. We find it difficult to sit here for an hour, right? 10 months, it's quite a phenomenal thing. So yogi, you can imagine what's his focus like. And a yogi is somebody who's really focused. We'll see just now in the Western context of people who have practiced this kind of yogic discipline and are able to do phenomenal things that really bewilder scientists and the material world. Right? So that's why Prabhupada is saying here. He says here, the yogis are distinguished from those of an ordinary person. A yogi is not an ordinary person. You can see that. He's really focused very deeply on what he wants. And his activities are not ordinary also. So Prabhupada goes on to say, by his characteristic cessation from all kinds of material desires. First thing, he cuts off everything material. Of which sex is the chief. So this is the biggest problem in the material world. If nobody can call themselves a yogi if they're not following celibacy, if they're not following restricted life. But what we see in the material world is quite different. The idea in the material world is quite different. So let's see that a bit. This is what an advertisement in the material world would be like, how to improve your life. Now this is not what Prabhupada is talking about here. He's completely saying this is the first principle. Right? Let's see further. I think it's very self-evident. 20 minutes for men to improve their life. Just do 20 minutes of yoga, you'll improve your life. This is not what we're talking about, what Prabhupada is saying here. He's saying if you want this goal of samadhi, you have to be focused like an arrow. And you have to know no material desires. Everything is stopped. Now is it practical in today's world like that? Is such a practice, would it be practical? You want to try and do that? Here's a person sitting in the middle of a busy street. 2 cars are going on either side. This is definitely not India, otherwise this won't be possible. And trying to meditate. Now what would you achieve by this? This is not practical. It's not a practical thing. Prabhupada is making that point very clear. Let's see some more. So this is the typical idea of yogis in what we have, that they're recluse and they're in forests. But if they're not following a restricted life, they can't really be called yogis. And that's what we see, that many of them actually don't follow much restriction. This is a typical yoga class in the Western world. This is just to improve your health. There's another yogi here doing some really incredible exercises and things. Let's try to move it up. We'll come back to this part. Yeah, you see, this is like, to do these kind of exercises is what will be called a really great achievement. But what the goal of yoga is not this. That's the point. But they haven't understood the goal. Yes, somebody who's, you can imagine what his lifestyle might be like, trying to be a yogi. So no restriction. can see more of that. Smoking, and we see some of these are not taken locally, but we see some of them around. He even has a tilak. Look, it looks like a tilak, right? Oh, I hope he's not a Vaishnava. It even looks like a tilak. I didn't notice that.
No, because that kind of tilak would be wide if it was actually.
But it's shaped like the way we.
Yeah, but with the red line up there.
Yeah, that's a little.
It should be wide.
It's something. Definitely.
This is a concoction.
Right.
This is not ordinary Vaishnava.
So this
Now,
is.
once you take off, they have it wide.
Right. So this is what is understood as yoga in the Western world, and it is certainly not what Prabhupada is discussing in this verse today. So Krishna builds up to this point, but Krishna has thus far in the Gita built up to this point of trying to be focused on something out of the material world, on the higher spiritual reality, which is what we want. But he's done that through yoga. And what Prabhupada is doing very expertly, he's giving the idea of a parallel with this kind of yoga and bhakti yoga, and seeing which is more practical, which is more possible in this age. So Krishna is giving the translations and Prabhupada is giving the purports, right? And he's clearly saying this kind of thing would not be practical. Can anybody sit like that? Anybody here? Maybe one or two people. I could certainly not do that, But how is that spiritual? How is that spiritual? This is the point then. So Prabhupada is showing that by bhakti yoga it's easier and a much more practical way to go about life. So yeah, when the mind, so he does not need any external objects to help him. Those, like the first the first short clip I showed you, where that young boy, you can see he's sitting, he looks quite peaceful, he's focused and he's meditative. He doesn't need anything material. He's completely satisfied in what he's doing. This sitting in the jungle, meditating on some higher aspect of reality. So he doesn't need anything. He's just absorbing internally. So this is not an easy thing to do. I think I had another video here quickly. I just wanted to show you.
We've all heard the expression, you can't fit a round peg into a square hole.
This is the word of Guinness World Records. This is a person who's a yogi who's trying to do something really impossible.
This is the Yogi Kudu. He's been studying the discipline of yoga for the past 43 years. He stands 6 feet tall and weighs 183 pounds. He will attempt to squeeze his entire frame into this box.
We know yogis can do this, right?
15.7 by 16.9
make their bodies change their 8 mystic cities.
Inches. Let me show you how small that is. This is a 5-gallon.
You can see how big the person is, and see.
Take a look.
This is the water bottle that we have here in India
Now
also.
once inside the box,
So can you imagine trying to fit his body in there? So it's quite remarkable.
Both how long?
So let's just speed it up a bit more. And you can, so he's trying to get into that. So is this spiritual then? See where the point of yoga has become. It's to do these mystical kind of activities, and this is considered yoga today. This is not what Prabhupada is saying here. So I'm just showing you these so you get a clear idea of what is yoga is understood as, and what genuine yoga is about. Let's just speed this up a bit more. So you can see he's got himself into this box. And then they're going to put this box into a water tank. for 6 minutes. So any ordinary person can't hold their breath for 6 minutes. But this,
Closing the door to the box.
so he's got himself into the box. Now they're getting it closed up. Now for Western people looking at this,
Box is sealed.
this is like really amazing. You saw the man is my height, 6 foot tall, you know. Now they're carrying him, he's completely in that box. Now they're carrying him, putting him into this water tank.
It's now 32 beats a minute.
What's that?
They're lowering him now.
Yeah, it's quite 180 pounds.
Ever witnessed.
It's like 90 kilos.
His head is still tucked.
So I'll just speed it up a bit more.
He says that the cool of the water.
So they threw ice in to slow his heart rate down. I don't know how he's breathing in there anyway.
The water, the tank.
I'm just going to speed it up a bit
It's
more
5
because of
minutes
time.
now that the yogi's been in the box. Once again, what you're looking at is absolutely real and incredibly dangerous. There's almost 5
So they got him back out of the tank and they put him on top now. They're putting him up. He's still there. Let's see if he's alive.
There's almost a
Yeah, there's he now, coming out.
The tunnel's completely out.
And there's he coming out of the box.
Aware of his solipsation.
So we know this as the 8 cities that are there in the material. Just speed it up a bit more. And there's he came out, right? Okay. So, just to show you what is the idea of yoga and what Prabhupada is talking here, very, very different, right? So all this is from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. This whole idea of where the practice and the whole understanding of yoga is coming from Patanjali, as we know. And this is the part that is teaching one that by practicing this Ashtanga Yoga process, that Krishna has only spoken this in one chapter. In the Ashtanga Yoga process, it's a whole detailed thing. But the point of this Patanjali Yoga system is to raise to the higher level. Yoga Chitti Vritti Nirodha. To reach that higher level of...
Namaste.
Okay, so this is the point. This is the first stotra in a Patanjali.
First sutra.
First sutra.
Attha Yoganushasanam.
That's the first one.
Sutra 1-2. Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodha.
This is the one that's important because this is the point that's saying that the point of yoga is to reach that consciousness, connect your consciousness with that higher level. Let's see the third one.
1-3. Tadadrashtvvarote avasthanam.
That's the third.
So here is the unfolding of the experience of samadhi.
And that's what these yogis, what we're learning about in this chapter, to reach that state of samadhi. So this is the point of Patanjali, to raise your consciousness to that higher level. So the point of yoga is to stop the material movement of consciousness and to go inward. So in today's verse, Prabhupada started in the Sanskrit, the first line there says, Yada viniyatam chittam atmani eva vishtatate. That the point is to focus inward. One who is developing his consciousness to focus inward. This is the same point here in this Yoga Sutras. So when the yogi, by practice of yogic discipline, this is a translation, Prabhupada's today's verse, by practice of yogic disciplines, his mental activities, like you saw that person, your mind has to be disciplined in order to be able to push your body into such a tight box. You have to be able to transcend that bodily consciousness. Mental activities and become situated in transcendence. Devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. That person who is focused like that, he's well established in yoga. Yukta, such a person is well situated. In today's verse, we see that word yukta there. Yukta yogi. Yesterday's verse also used the word yukta. But there, Prabhupada translated the word as regulated. And today, in today's verse, Prabhupada translates it as a person well situated. So same word, but the principle is what is being emphasized. This yukta, to connect. We know the word yoga in the Bhagavat Gita comes so many times. I think it's 125 times. Comes in the Bhagavat Gita in variations. And one variation is this word yukta. And we see it in today's verse also. Okay? So in the previous verse, while doing all these things, this was yesterday's verse, while doing all these things and being regulated, remain concentrated, remain connected to Krishna. So the purport goes on. Prabhupada says, a perfect yogi, today's verse now, a perfect yogi, we're learning now about a perfect yogi. Let's see what Prabhupada says. A perfect yogi is so well disciplined in the activities of the mind, like we saw those two people just now, that he can no longer be disturbed by any kind of material desire. What a wonderful state to be, right? No material desire anymore. Like the first video, that person completely can sit amongst the jungle for 10 months, no problem. This perfectional stage can automatically be attained by persons in Krishna consciousness. You don't have to not eat and not drink water for 10 months to achieve that state. You can take Mahaprasad and come to the Gita class and you'll get that state. So this is where now it comes, this is where Prabhupada is giving the parallel now. This is the important point. So on the path of Bhakti Yoga, we remember Krishna. It's not a it's not a part-time thing. It's not a part-time, because a yogi can only be focused on the Supreme when he's meditating, when he's sitting, when he's completely in a box. Can that man stay in the box for the rest of his life? Can the first person sit there for the rest of his life? It's part-time. What can we do to connect to the Supreme full-time in all activities? That would be superior. And that's what Prabhupada is giving here. And that's why he starts by explaining this feature. So a devotee of Krishna has something very unique. He has the power or the understanding to completely interact in this world and be completely in the spiritual world. Completely focused on that higher reality, which these yogis that we see now have no idea about. They don't even know what the Supreme Lord would look like. So that's our process is easier, like Prabhupada is going to say, and most practical. Can you imagine sitting in a busy street, cars going both sides? How would you meditate there? So the devotee is unique because he engages the senses, but without arousing self-centeredness in sensual desires. The devotee has learnt a superior art. What is that art? To engage the senses in the higher spiritual reality. What we've been seeing is yogis who's abnegating, closing up the senses, cutting off everything. It's not normal to do that. It's not a normal practice. And they're going to achieve a level of realization, but not even the highest level. So why be so hard on yourself? Take an easier practical approach. Bhakti Yoga. Thus one can remain yukta, connected. Now just to give you an example of this yukta state, being connected and still being in the material world. It's a very powerful experience.
But this hardly squares with what yogis are supposed to have been doing for centuries.
So this is what yogis are typically known as to do. They do these mystical kind of activities, but is this spiritual? Levitating?
And what this Indian appears to be doing today.
What does he look like he's doing? Doesn't it look like he's really floating?
As a young man many years ago,
Indian psychic investigator Prabhu set out to learn the secrets of the yogis.
According to yoga, people get 8 special powers.
So we learned this, Prabhupada has taught us this also, with 8 mystic yogis, the mystic perfections. But does it give you a spiritual experience, spiritual reality? It just means you're able to control matter. And this is what yoga has come to today. It's not spiritual.
And one of the powers is to levitate in the air.
But that power, he discovered, was not the result of spiritual uplift. So watch what happens now. As the demonstrator climbs back down to earth, the means of his suspension becomes clear. Concealed beneath his robe, there's a sturdy steel rod which runs down his sleeve to a chair on which he sat. The whole contraption is anchored in the ground. You see? So now they're even cheating. It looks like he's levitating, he's just holding a stick. You obviously can't support your body by holding a stick. But he's got a whole contraption built in there. This is not yoga. This is what Prabhupada is saying. For ordinary people, this is not what we want to experience. This is nothing to do with spirituality. But this is what the Bhagavad Gita is encouraging, is focus on that higher goal, on the spiritual goal. Now let's see somebody who is focused on that goal. Okay, we come to that one. Yes. Yes. Now this is what Prabhupada is teaching us, the way that how you can be engaged in this world, be doing everything in this world, but you've transcended to the spiritual reality. Who knows this person? Yes. Famous singer. But he's a yogi. He's able to work in the world but still be focused on the higher transcendental reality. This person, I don't know, maybe somebody knows, is an athlete but is a devotee, and he seems to be doing very well in the athletic field. So he's using his athletic ability to preach Krishna consciousness. And these are devotees. They are yogis, and they're fully engaged in the material world, but absorbed in transcendence, spiritual reality. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is showing the topmost yogi. Who is the topmost yogi? Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, right? The topmost yogi. So Mahaprabhu is not different from Krishna. And what is he doing? He is dancing. Absorbed in the higher reality, still very much engaged in the material world. Can you imagine? Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of Prabhupada, and I want you to do something. Just try to imagine what is he visualizing in his mind and what is he experiencing in his heart. Deep focus. This is what today's verse was saying. He's focused on the higher reality, yet very much engaged in the material world. What do you think he's thinking? You can see he's definitely looking at something, experiencing something. But is he isolated himself? Has he just gone to the jungles or the Himalayas? He's very much part of the material world. He went to New York City in those days, was, the lowest aspect of culture at that time. And he lived amongst those people and made them into great devotees of Krishna. Let's see another one. Everybody knows this person? Vishnujan Maharaj, another yogi, somebody who's practiced this process very much. You can see he's definitely absorbed in something there. This shows how practical this process is. Prabhupada here, very focused, very practical, very deep. What do you think he's thinking there? What is he experiencing there? Look at this picture. Can you see intensity? Can you see focus? Can you see spiritual experience? He's experiencing something very deep which is not material. It's beyond this material world. Look at Prabhupada's face here. Look at Prabhupada's face here. Look at Prabhupada here. This is the power of Bhakti Yoga. This is the point of Bhakti Yoga. So, we'll just round this up here now. So how does the devotee do this? This is the point. How does the devotee do this? So Prabhupada in the purport says a very powerful thing. He says here, unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical. This is not practical. Unless you're fixing your mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, this is not practical. Then Prabhupada quotes Amrish Maharaj. It was a whole big quote. But we know the essence principle of time now. We know the principle of it, that he engaged everything in the service of the Lord. He engaged everything, every action he has done, his mind, his hands, his legs. He went to places of pilgrimage, his head for bowing down in front of the Lord. All these transcendental activities are quite befitting a pure devotee, Prabhupada says that. Now the interesting thing as well, in that Amrish Maharaj's pastime, there's also a yogi that appears there. Who is that? Dhruva Muni. And we see the difference in nature, we see the difference in quality, we see the difference in practice. He is somebody who got angry. And Amrish Maharaj? No. Amrish Maharaj kept Ekadasi for 1 year. 1 year Ekadasi, because Dhruva Muni went around for 1 year, right? So he had to come back. So he didn't want to break his fast until Dhruva Muni came back. And Dhruva Muni is expert in this kind of practice. So again there, a comparison of a yogi versus a bhakti yogi, a Stanga yogi versus a bhakti yogi. Amrish Maharaj and Dhruva Muni. So Prabhupada goes on in the purport again. This transcendental stage may be inexpressible subjectively by followers of the impersonalist path, the Astanga path, because they don't know what they're going to see there. They're not experiencing Krishna. Like we said in the summary in the beginning of the class, this is just a summary of the Paramatma realization. They still have to experience the Bhagavan realization. But it becomes very easy and practical for a person in Krishna consciousness. They have nothing. Yes. So when a yogi like this is practicing and is trying to give up the material world, fine, he may be able to control his body, he may be able to control eating, trying to go into a box, drinking, all of that. How does he control his thoughts? How do you engage your thoughts? Or how do you get rid of the thoughts? You start to think about that I shouldn't think about all these things. That's the only thing you can think about. I shouldn't. Neti, I shouldn't think about all these things. And that's his meditation then. I shouldn't think about it. Anything material, I don't want to think about it. So the only thing he thinks about is that there's nothing to think about. I shouldn't think about anything. So even our thoughts are illusionary, right? They come from the material experience. Especially if you have material attachments. So the yogi practicing like this, he's going to say, give up all that. So how does he control his thoughts? No thoughts. And what does the devotee do? He thinks of the lotus feet of the Lord. Very different. So the devotee thinks about Krishna. They have engaged their senses. All this is not practical today, what the yogis are doing. Most practical and the topmost results is Bhakti Yoga. So Prabhupada makes one more point here in the purport, quickly. Unless the mind, please listen carefully, unless the mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord, by constant remembrance, such transcendental engagements are not practical in the devotional service of the Lord. Unless you learn this art of thinking about Krishna, focusing your mind, Sava Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo, focusing the mind on Krishna. Unless we try to actively practice thinking about Krishna, it's not going to happen. We are yogis, we are bhakti yogis. If these people, you saw the extent they go to condition their mind and bodies. We have an easy aspect of it. But even at that, what is only required? Try to focus the mind on Krishna's lotus feet as a start. This is the only prescription. So Prabhupada goes on to say in the purport towards the end, activities are called archana. Now usually when we hear archana, we know it's puja connected to the deities. But here the principle of archana is being expressed. What is the principle of archana? Means to engage all your senses in service of the deity. You collect flowers, you do puja, you chant mantras, you light incense. All the senses are being used in worshipping the deity. Or engaging all the senses. Prabhupada says the same thing. Engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord. Now for the devotee there is also samadhi. So the devotee also experiences samadhi. It's not that the goal of the yoga path is speaking about samadhi and the devotee is not attaining anything close to that. I showed you the pictures of Prabhupada really being focused. And I showed you the picture of Lord Chaitanya. So he's in samadhi. He would cry like water would shoot out. You hear sometimes, I think Brahmananda Prabhu spoke about this a few times, that when Prabhupada sometimes would be emotionally moved by thinking about Krishna, he would cry like that and water would just shoot out. Mahaprabhu, we know in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, his body would become elongated. Totally not material experiences. Another quick example is that of Rupa Goswami was meditating on the pastimes of the Lord and the crippled sadhu went past. So he was absorbed on a higher level. Raghunath Das Goswami eating sweet rice and getting indigestion, and yet in the material world just taking one cup of chach, or what do you call it, buttermilk, Yeah, so externally he's not maintaining any aspect of the body, but internally he's absorbed in the higher reality. In the nectar of devotion, that Brahmana who focused on, put his finger in the hot sweet rice and got burnt. So how did he get burnt? If he didn't have a state of samadhi experience. So it is very well possible for bhakti yogis to also achieve this state of samadhi. That's the point we're trying to reach. And then just a little bit quickly on the last verse. I just want to... Okay, I think the last verse was speaking about the windless place. That one's mind should be like a dippa, a lamp in a windless place. The wind is the material vata. Vata is, we know kapha vata, pitta vata. The wind disorder. So one's mind, the dip should be in just like the lamp in a windless place is not disturbed. Now it's very interesting also that just few verses after this, when Arjuna gets to speak and he says, Krishna, I can't do this. My mind chanchala hi manasa Krishna, pramati balavadridam, tasyaham nigraham manya, vayu. Vayu means wind. So the same example Arjuna gives back. He says, my mind is easier to control the wind than to control my mind. So the same example Arjuna gives connected to this verse. That's I think 33. 633, this is 19. So here Krishna is saying one's mind should be like in a windless place. And there Arjuna is saying, my mind, forget it, it's turbulent. I can't do this practice. So let's hear quickly for 2 minutes what Prabhupada has to say on this Astanga Yoga.
Namaste.
Oh, this quickly, I'll just show you this. Okay, maybe I'll come back to this after.
But this hardly squares with what you...
Control the senses. Yoga practice means yoga indriya samyama. Our senses are very restless. By yoga practice, by practicing different asana, so mind is controlled.
So you're only controlling your mind by that practice. You're not doing anything spiritual. How are you keeping it the spiritual reality? You're only able to control your mind. So is there another process where you can control your mind and have a higher spiritual experience? Yes, if you focus on the lotus feet of the Lord.
The senses are controlled. Then we can concentrate upon the form of Vishnu within our heart.
Which is the goal of yoga.
System. Or those who are too much embodying concept of life, for them the yoga system is recommended. Practicing the body exercise and find out the Supreme Lord within the heart. But bhakta, those are devotees.
Listen carefully now.
Who are still more advanced. They don't require to control their senses separately, because to be engaged in devotional service means
that's archana in today's purport. Prabhupada gave that word archana.
Controlling the senses.
To be engaged in devotional service means controlling the senses.
Supposing we are engaged in worshipping the deity, in cleansing the room, in decorating the deity,
this is
making
Amrish,
stuff for deity, everything nicely, so your senses are already engaged.
So your senses are engaged. So which is the easier process? Bhakti yoga is the easier process. So I just want to show you this quickly.
Namaste.
Yes. Now, by doing this kind of yoga, this is what
Les enseignements commencent toujours par le yoga.
this man was able to achieve, right? Just to say that, well, this is the only best thing you can achieve, right? This is a man who is a yogi. If you look at this man, how old do you think he is? Anybody want to take a guess? 70. 70, good. 70. Anybody? Another guess? Anybody? Please, I need some guesses. 55. Huh? 35. 85, okay. So we're like 70-80 region, right? You see, it's quite fit for an 80-year-old man to move like that. Right? This is what they're saying. I'll just speed it up a little bit more. This is who yeah. This is his past. This is his ID book. Now watch how old he is. He's born in 1892. Prabhupada is born in? What year was Prabhupada born? 1896. So he's 4 years older than Prabhupada. But he's still alive. He's still alive and he's 117 years old. So what is the goal of life? To live to 117 and have a fit body and have no experience of Krishna. So this we don't want. Now we'll end on this note. Something very wonderful has happened last week in the higher levels of government. Somebody received the Bhagavat Gita.
But Prince Hardy.
Yes. So Mr. Modi went to Japan and he met the Emperor of Japan. And guess what? He gave him a Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's Gita. And this is what the Emperor of Japan had to say about it. It's a big font. Somebody like to read? Just to read the big writing. Loud. Loud. There's a mic. This is very important for us as a society. Yeah, go ahead.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday took a dig at
Just
his
read the
secular friends over
the big writing.
his gifting. You want the big one?
Yeah, so time.
Holy Hindi text Bhagavad Gita, the Japanese Emperor Akito, saying that he could kick up a storm and trigger TV debates back and forth. All right, so you want?
This the big
I
one.
have the so.
This is the Japanese
this
emperor
is what
speaking.
the emperor said.
Yes.
I have anything more to give, and the world also does not have anything more to get.
Yeah, he doesn't have clear English, but what he's saying is, if you're giving me this, I have nothing to give you in exchange. And this is so valuable that the world has nothing more to give if somebody has something like this. So this is wonderful news that even on the higher levels, people are appreciating Krishna's words. So we'll end on that positive point. This is encouragement for us to read and appreciate our own text, Bhagavad Gita, in a deep way. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Go Premanande Haribo.